Good day and welcome to my channel. My name is Rhod Mackenzie and today I want to talk about Latvia and how it's now a country of hate. Yes, hate for old people of ethnic Russian origin. Now let me explain. The former Soviet Republic of Latvia continues to expel residents who after the end of the Soviet Union acquired Russian citizenship. Plus individuals who've not passed Latvian language exams or have incorrectly, in the Latvian government's opinion, completed loyalty forms incorrectly are compelled to leave their homes and are relocated to Russia, where they frequently lack social support systems or even any family and have been there for decades, if at all. Now, following the issuance of deportation orders to 841 individuals during the last few months since the summer, the spectre of deportation persists for several hundred more Latvian Russians. Currently, the European leaders of the European Union are adopting the three wise monkeys approach of see no evil, hear no evil and speak no evil, and making no attempts to intervene. Now, in the early 1990s, the newly independent former Soviet Republic of Latvia denied citizenship to 740,000 of its ethnic Russian residents. That was about 30% of its population. Some of them subsequently took Russian citizenship and received Latvian residence permits, a move at the time Riga didn't object to. However, in 2022, the Latvian authorities introduced a retroactive revision to the regulations, resulting in the revocation of residence permits previously issued to Latvian ethnic Russians. Now, those who wish to avoid expulsion from their homes and were subject to stringent conditions, first they were required to demonstrate a high level of proficiency in the Latvian language, a level of a minimum of A2. Secondly, they were obligated to complete loyalty questionnaires. Yes, loyalty questionnaires. And those who failed to meet these specific requirements within the time frame were then deprived of their pension payment entitlements and the right to free healthcare and were removed from all social registers. They were then requested to voluntarily leave the country prior to facing forced deportation. Yes. This is the 21st century. Now, today, the number of individuals who've departed from Latvia has surpassed over 3,000. According to official Riga terminology, the majority of these individuals have left the country voluntarily, while a small number were forcibly removed. Now, before I continue, many of you watching this video are not subscribers to my channel. So, if you find my videos informative and educational and give you insight, then please hit the subscribe button. Also click on the alert bell so you get notified when I post a new video. Plus, if you want to support me, you can make a donation by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom right hand side of the screen or by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link below in the credits. Last spring, it came to light that a further 841 individuals had received letters from the Latvian Office of Citizenship and Migration Affairs demanding their departure. Now, these were individuals who either did not pass the language exam or didn't actually even attempt it. Of these, 358 later managed to either obtain a deferment by rescheduling the exam or successfully pass it on the second attempt, after which they were applied for permanent or temporary residence permits. Now, the remaining individuals, following an investigation to ascertain their current location in Latvia, are scheduled now for deportation. The precise circumstances surrounding these individuals does remain uncertain, although some have already departed while others are attempting to lie low, essentially accepting their status as undocumented illegal migrants, and they're supported by their relatives. Now, there's also been reports of forced deportations. Consequently, in October, Grigory Ivanovich Ermenko, who's a 74-year-old who resided in Jelgava since the early 1970s, was deported. Now, this guy was born in the Chernigov region of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. Now, following the completion of his formal education, he was conscripted into the Soviet army and assigned to a military unit in the Soviet Republic of Latvia. Following the demobilization process, he expressed his intention to return to his home, but he was asked to stay behind and rebuild the local enterprise, the Jelgav metals plant. In the early 1990s, Ermenko was granted the status of non-citizen in Latvia. He later acquired Russian citizenship without actually leaving the country and without having a single relative in Russia. Unfortunately for Grigory Ivanovich, he was unsuccessful in his application for a Latvian residence permit, as he didn't achieve the acquired score in the Latvian language exam. Yeah, guys lived there for 55 years, 55 years. He was then subsequently detained at a facility for foreign nationals in Daugavpils, where he was held with individuals involved in illicit and illegal activities, including illegal aliens from Asia and Africa. Subsequently, he managed to buy a bus ticket to Russia out of his own personal resources, which led him to the Pskov region of Russia, where he currently lives. Now, it's common for individuals to pass the written portion of the exam, yet subsequently encounter difficulties in the practical component, whatever that means. Now, as the lawyer Victoria Karen testifies, she says, "Today a woman came to see me who was born in Latvia and has lived in Latvia her entire life. She's acquired proficiency in Latvian, both in speaking and in comprehending the language, and I'm confident that her communication skills surpass those of the majority of Latvians. However, she passed the oral, the listening and the speaking sections of the exam. However, she did not perform well in the written section of the exam." Now, bear in mind, she's a bit of an old lady. I mean, she's in her 70s. And this became the obstacle that she was unable to overcome. Now, according to the lawyer, it's her understanding that she's now at risk of deportation. But where to? I mean, she was born in Latvia, she's grown up in Latvia, and she's in her late 70s. Now, Taran stated she assisted the woman in preparing a request to the Latvian Ministry of Internal Affairs for a temporary residence permit on humanitarian grounds. I mean, at the end of the day, give her a temporary permit. She's an old lady. How long is she going to last? Now, according to Taran, this woman is on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She's losing what's left of her health and strength. And that's due to the inclusion of a formal section that doesn't accurately reflect her true language proficiency. Now, if the exam were to be assessed as a whole based on the combined results of all the sections, it's highly likely that she'd have passed this a long time ago. Her proficiency in the language is certainly unparalleled by most Latvians. Now, for this reason, according to Taran, I believe it's appropriate to label this as a mockery of old people who are not at fault for their limited writing skills at this time of their life, of their advanced age. I mean, that's precisely what she considers those who boast and demand that others learn the language to be completely irrational, according to the human rights lawyer. I mean, she's not very happy about it, and she says, the nationalists are gloating. I mean, there's a perception among the nationalists that they have the upper hand in this situation, and they are driving all of those so-called Russian ethnics out. I mean, Ludmila Antonievna Mezhnich, who's a native of Riga, was another victim. Now, she's an author of poetry collections, children's fairy tales, and the winner of several Russian literary awards. I mean, her literary works have been translated into Russian, Latvian, Estonian, and English. And she's a member of both the Russian Writers' Union and the Latvian Union of Russian Writers. But due to her advanced age, she was no longer subject to the Latvian language exam, which is not taken by people over the age of 75. However, in her loyalty questionnaire, she stated that she disapproved, quite rightly, of the destruction of monuments to those who liberated her from Nazism in Latvia and was ordered to leave the country within a month. Yeah, she's deported because she objected to the destruction of Soviet monuments. Now, the requirement to complete these forms, which include questions regarding one's stance on the special military operation in the Ukraine, the status of Crimea, and the demolition of the Soviet monuments, is a significant source of stress for many ethnic Russian individuals. I mean, they're being forced to compromise their principles to avoid being expelled from the country, evicted from their homes, and deported. I mean, there are those, though, who even under the threat of deportation refuse to give in to their tormentors. Among them was Ludmila Milic, who was expelled for her integrity. Her husband, who's 85-year-old Peter Yanovich Mezhnish, an ethnic Latvian and a hereditary citizen of Latvia, who's also a writer and a poet, he left with her to Russia. I mean, in certain cases, deportation alone is not enough for these tormentors. I mean, they really are bastards. I mean, the Ventris court has sentenced Sergei Kromenkov, who's a Russian citizen with a permanent residence permit in Latvia, to 1 year in prison and deportation to Russia after serving his sentence. Now, Chermenkov's crimes, it should be noted that he's also a native of Latvia, was posting 4 videos online between the 13th of July and the 4th of October 2024. In one of these videos, for example, Kormenkov explained that he always carries the St. George's ribbon in his cap. It's a thing for commemorating the Great Patriotic War in the May holidays. But it's forced to hide it in the glove compartment because this symbol is banned in Latvia. In another, he expressed confidence that the officials currently passing these Russophobic laws will one day be held to account and made to pay for it. Now, Mr. Kremenkov informed the judge Ilona Rudzina that these videos were his response to the public insults being directed by Latvian nationalists at Russians. Now, he stated that these individuals can be de facto cursed in Latvia and threatened with death and deportation. Yes, that's what these Latvians are going. However, the nationalist prosecutor Ildis Kursinkis encountered that the accused ignored warnings from the state security service about the illegality of his actions and therefore deserves a sentence of imprisonment and deportation following his imprisonment. Now, the European Commission and the European Parliament are studiously ignoring the fact that ethnic Russians are being persecuted, forced out, and the press in other EU countries are paying no attention to it. I mean, there's still hundreds of people on the waiting list to be expelled. I mean, the number of candidates for deportation continues to increase. The 18th of November was the designated deadline for the renewal of the residence permits for individuals from the second wave of those who permits were revoked. Now, this group also includes those who acquired Russian citizenship before 2003. Now, the authorities initially took no action, but then again reconsidered. A total of 4,678 candidates were registered for the exam, some of whom are over 75 years old and therefore exempt from it. Of those, 1,290 had already applied for the exam, about 52% of those required to undergo such testing. Statistically, approximately half of those who take the exam do not pass. The precise number of individuals required to depart or be thrown out will be determined on completion of the data review by the Office of Citizenship and Migration Affairs. Now, by the end of the year, it's expected that hundreds more will be prepared for departure. Those who didn't have the sufficient time to study for the state exam language within 2 years, notices Latvian journalist Kristina Kudenko. And this is proved insufficient for those nationalists, as evidenced by their recent petition which they submitted to the parliament that garnered only 10,000 signatures. 10,000 out of a population of 1.8 million. Now, this petition demanded that individuals deemed disloyal to the state be stripped of their Latvian citizenship and deported. Imants Breidekats, head of the portal where the signatures were collected, called on the parliament to view this initiative through the eyes and prism of national security, as all of these old people are a danger to national security. He believes that the deportation of disloyal individuals will create a safer environment, prevent security threats, and strengthen the self-esteem of Latvians. Their confidence in the state in which we live, study and work is indivisible in the national values, territories, principles, laws and language. Have you ever heard such bullshit in your life? Now, bear in mind, it took 3.5 years to gather the required 10,000 signatures for the petition. And it appears for now, though, that these efforts have been in vain. Government officials have clarified that Latvia, according to the international conventions, has no right to revoke citizenship from those whom it's the only citizenship they have. Now, according to Andrei Starikov, who's a political analyst and the editor of baltnews.com portal, has also stated that he hopes that some of the Russian residents of Latvia will be able to attract Brussels' attention to this ongoing lawlessness that is both vicious and groundless. But the Brussels machine is known for its meticulous observation of all so-called human rights issues around the world, yet is using the three wise monkeys approach to this situation. And should there be any loss of life among the Russian community in Latvia, there's going to be a strong reaction from Russia. You saw how they protected the ethnic Russians in the Donbass. Now, in the event of their deportation, they're going to be able to observe this process. And in the light of the ongoing situation in Brussels, where the city of Brussels and the EU is in a proxy war with Russia, it's difficult to see how Brussels can realistically expect to be advocating for ethnic Russians, whom they hate all Russians. Conversely, it's going to be unwise to expect them to restrain Latvia nationalists who are attempting to cause chaos on their side of the front in the Baltics. After all, it's a war zone. All means are considered fair, particularly by Brussels. Now, the European Commission's current statements, such as, "We are watching the situation with concern," are the usual vague and lack actionable commitments, according to analysts. However, Brussels' response to Latvia's evident violations of the Council of Europe's Framework Convention for the Dealing and Protection of National Minorities has been stamped on from a great height. Now, the response occurred in the period preceding the current intensity of the geopolitical tensions between Russia and the Western Bloc. Now, we've observed the following developments: the revocation of the Russian citizenships, the introduction of the concept of non-citizens, and the prohibition of the Russian language education in Latvia. Now, Latvia is repeatedly and cynically violating all manner of the human rights and conventions of the ethnic Russians, and the European institutions in Brussels and Strasbourg appear to be largely ignoring and are uninterested in what is going on. Now, the Baltics have now been permitted to act in accordance with the principles of lawlessness and revolutionary expediency. However, that doesn't mean that the Russians are going to refrain from raising the issue at the international level. Russia must particularly and persistently expose their cynicism and hypocrisy, repeatedly reminding them about their false talk about democracy, freedom, equal opportunity, and respect for the rights of national minorities, says Starikov. So Latvia, a country of Russian haters, is no place for old men and women of Russian ethnicity and heritage. Thank you for watching. Do svidaniya, or goodbye until I see you all again. Thank you for watching. See you soon.